I never thought moving into Oak Ridge Estates would turn me into an amateur detective, but Karen Wilkins made sure of that. As the president of our homeowners association, Karen ran our neighborhood like her personal fiefdom. From the moment I moved in, she'd been watching my every move through her blinds, clipboard perpetually in hand. My house was perfect, except for one thing. The previous owners had installed a beautiful in-ground pool that became my sanctuary after long days at the engineering firm where I work. Every evening, I'd come home, change into my swim trunks, and enjoy a peaceful swim. That is, until Karen decided my pool was somehow a personal affront to her authority. It started with a notice taped to my door claiming my pool maintenance wasn't up to community standards. I was confused. The water was crystal clear, I tested the chemicals twice weekly, and the surrounding landscaping was immaculate. When I called the number on the notice, Karen answered with a sickly sweet voice. "Oh, hello, Mr. Harrison. I'm just doing my duty as HOA president to ensure our neighborhood maintains its property values," she said with a condescending tone that made my skin crawl. "Several neighbors have complained about your pool. The water appears cloudy from the street." I invited her to inspect it herself, thinking she'd see it was perfectly maintained. Big mistake. That gave her an excuse to scrutinize everything about my property. She strutted around my backyard in her beige pantsuit, making notes and clicking her tongue disapprovingly. "Your patio furniture doesn't match the approved color palette in the bylaws," she said, pointing her pen at my perfectly normal navy blue loungers. "And these plants aren't on the approved landscaping list. You'll need to submit Form 37B for a variance." I tried reasoning with her. "Karen, I've reviewed the bylaws. There's nothing about specific patio furniture colors, and these plants are native to this region. They're drought-resistant and environmentally friendly." Her eyes narrowed as she tapped her clipboard. "I know the bylaws better than anyone, Mr. Harrison. You'll receive formal notices about these violations by tomorrow." She spun on her heel and marched away, leaving me dumbfounded in my supposedly non-compliant backyard. True to her word, the next day I received 3 separate violation notices, each threatening fines if not addressed within 7 days. I spent my entire weekend completing ridiculous paperwork for variances and exceptions that shouldn't have been necessary in the first place. But I played along, hoping this would be the end of it. It wasn't. Over the next month, Karen found a new violation every week. My mailbox was supposedly 2 inches too tall. My garbage cans were visible from the street for 15 minutes too long on collection day. The American flag on my porch was excessive patriotic display. I began documenting everything, taking date-stamped photos and keeping records of our interactions. Something told me I'd need evidence eventually. Then came the pool party incident. I'd invited a few colleagues over for a small barbecue on a Saturday afternoon. Nothing crazy, just 6 adults enjoying burgers and the pool. Around 4 p.m., Karen appeared at my fence line, phone in hand. "This is a violation of noise ordinances and the guest parking policy," she declared loudly enough for everyone to hear. My friends looked uncomfortable as she photographed their cars parked along the curb. The bylaws clearly state that gatherings of more than 4 guests require advanced HOA approval. I maintained my composure, even as embarrassment and anger bubbled inside me. "Karen, there's no such provision in the bylaws. I've read them cover to cover. And we're not being loud. We're having a normal conversation. I've already called for an emergency HOA board meeting to discuss your continued violations," she said with a smug smile. "Expect significant fines." She turned to walk away, then stopped. "Oh, and your pool? Still not up to standards. The chlorine levels are probably all wrong." After my guests left early, feeling awkward about the whole situation, I checked my security cameras. I'd installed them after the 3rd or 4th bizarre violation notice, just to protect myself. What I saw made my blood run cold. While I was inside getting more drinks, Karen had approached my pool, looked around furtively, and sprinkled something into the water from a small container she pulled from her purse. I immediately tested my pool water. The pH was way off, and there was something unusual in the chemical balance that my home test kit couldn't identify. I scooped a sample into a sterile container and called a professional pool service for emergency testing. Their results confirmed my suspicions. Someone had dumped industrial-strength alkaline cleaner into my pool, enough to cause serious skin irritation or even chemical burns. That night, I couldn't sleep. I kept thinking about what could have happened if one of my friends had gotten back into the pool, or worse, if I had invited colleagues with children. The next morning, I went straight to the police station with my water test results and security footage. Officer Rodriguez reviewed the evidence with growing concern. "This isn't a neighborly dispute anymore, Mr. Harrison. This is criminal behavior, vandalism, trespassing, and potentially assault if anyone had been injured. We'll need formal statements and we'll follow up with Miss Wilkins." I felt a weight lift off my shoulders. Finally, someone was taking this seriously. "There's more," I told him, pulling out my folder of documented harassment. "This has been ongoing for months." The officer reviewed my meticulous records and nodded grimly. 2 days later, I was working in my front yard when a police cruiser pulled up to Karen's house. I pretended to focus on my gardening while watching from the corner of my eye. Officer Rodriguez and a female officer approached her door and spoke with her briefly before she began gesticulating wildly. Even from across the street, I could hear her shrill protests about her authority as HOA president. The situation escalated quickly. Karen refused to cooperate, attempting to close her door on the officers. When Officer Rodriguez placed his foot to prevent the door from shutting, she tried to push past them to her car. Within moments, she was being handcuffed and read her rights while neighbors peered from behind curtains at the spectacle. As they guided her toward the police car, she spotted me watching. "This is your fault," she shrieked, her face contorted with rage. "I was protecting our property values. You're ruining this neighborhood with your non-compliance." Officer Rodriguez gently but firmly helped her into the back seat as she continued her tirade. I felt no joy at seeing her arrested, only relief that the harassment might finally end. That evening, the HOA vice president called to inform me that Karen had been charged with criminal trespass, vandalism, and reckless endangerment. The board had called an emergency meeting and unanimously voted to remove her as president, effective immediately. The consequences didn't end there. Local news picked up the story. Apparently Karen had terrorized other neighborhoods before moving to ours. Previous complaints had been handled internally by other HOA boards, allowing her to simply move and continue her reign of terror elsewhere. This time, with criminal charges filed, everything was public record. 3 weeks later, I received a letter from the court informing me that Karen had accepted a plea deal. 6 months probation, mandatory community service, a restraining order preventing her from coming within 100 feet of my property, and restitution for all damages, including the professional pool cleaning service that cost nearly $2,000. The final blow came when Karen, a real estate agent specializing in exclusive communities, was called before the state licensing board to explain her conduct. As I sat in the back of the hearing room, I watched her shoulders slump when they announced their decision to suspend her license for 1 year. She turned around, her face ashen, and for the first time since I'd known her, Karen Wilkins was completely speechless.